I am Yahuah your Alahim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage and slavery. You will have no other mighty ones or gods before my face. How does that transition into Yahusha Alahim? What does that mean? Have no other mighty ones before my face. Well, he said it, didn't he? Love Yahuah your Alahim with all your heart, mind, body, and love your neighbor as yourself. Yahusha's saying, love me more than anything else. That's how you fulfill the command. The 2 royal laws cover all the 10 commandments. So if you are doing the 2 royal laws, loving Yahusha your Alahim more than anything else, you are covering all the Torah and the prophets in a new and living way, because it is new blood and new covenant written on your hearts. Every command can be fulfilled in our behavior. Our behavior is the only form of worship Yahusha is interested in today. It's all behavior. So loving Yahuah your Alahim, Yahuah's gone. Yahuah transitioned into flesh, into Yahusha, our Messiah, our deliverer, our Alahim, seated in all authority and power in the 𝗕𝗪𝗓, right here in another dimension. And we have access to him on our hearts through the portal connection. His blood has made a way for us. So, love Yahusha Alahim more than anything else. Second commandment, you will not bow down to any images. You will not make for yourself any graven images of wood or stone. Do not bow down and do not serve them. For I will visit the crookedness on many generations who are hating me, but the kindness to those who are serving me. You know the second commandment. How is that fulfilled and completed in Yahusha Alahim? He's talking about, he's not talking about literal wood, stone, gold, silver, bowing down to literal things. Although today materialism is rampant. People are serving and worshipping and bowing down to money and wealth and materialism. But the greatest form of idolatry, because that's what we're talking about, idolatry, bowing down to other things, is the self, the fleshly self. And as we know, in order to transition into the wilderness of Yahusha Alahim, you need to die to yourself. The flesh has to die. That is how you fulfill the second commandment. Because remember, the 2 royal laws cover all the Torah and the prophets. Love Yahusha Alahim with all your heart, mind, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. You can't do that if you're living and dwelling and manipulated and controlled by the flesh. And if you're not acknowledging Yahusha as Alahim and serving him as the only living Alahim, Yahuah's gone. He's transitioned. Then you are into idolatry, my friend, and you're breaking all the commandments. Yahusha is our Alahim. Do not bow to any other. The third commandment states that you will not cast the name of Yahuah your Alahim to ruin. Do not cast the name of Yahuah your Alahim to ruin. How does that transition into Yahusha Alahim? Where did Yahuah go? We can't be using pagan titles, God and Jesus and Lord and Christ and all those things. They're all pagan idolatry. He hates those. That's what the religions of the world use, and many others. He wants his name to be called Yahuah. But where did Yahuah go? He transitioned into flesh. Yahuah's no more. He transitioned into flesh and took on the name Yahusha, which means Yahuah and so much more, deliverance and all these other things. So by declaring the name of Yahusha, you are declaring the name of Yahuah and so much more. You are declaring who he is, your deliverance, your Alahim. Do not cast the name of Yahusha, because we are to love Yahusha Alahim with all our heart, mind, body, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. The 2 royal laws. If you are not transitioning into Yahusha Alahim in the wilderness, you're breaking all the commandments, just like all the religious people do, and society. You're caught up in idolatry. We need to transition all the laws and the prophets into Yahusha. And he says, do not cast my name to ruin. There's only one name above all names, the secret name that no one knows about, written on your stone in Revelation. It's Yahusha. Yahusha is the only living Alahim. Fourth commandment states to honor the 7th day Shabbat. Keep it set apart, keep it Kodesh. How does that transition into Yahusha Alahim? Is it just looking at the literal, fleshly, earthly things? Because what's got to happen to the flesh? What's going to happen to the earthly? What's going to happen to the earthly here? Existence, world, universe, stars. what's going to happen? It's all going to frackle up at the arrival of Yahusha. That's what we're to be preparing for. That's how the old Torah and prophets transition into Yahusha Alahim. We are to be preparing for the final Sabbath day rest, seventh day millennial rest and eternal rest that Paul says, I fear most of you won't enter into. And he was talking to Hebrews living in the promised land. So it had nothing to do with a literal 7-day Sabbath, and it had nothing to do with a literal promised land rest either. He was talking about something in a different reign, because his reign, Yahusha's reign, is not of this world. So to transition this fourth commandment into Yahusha, we have to come into the wilderness. You have to put off the flesh and all the fleshly understandings. It's not talking about sin, fleshly carnal sins. It's talking about the fleshly carnal Torah of sin and death. That has to be put off too, to come into the true spiritual eternal realities of day-to-day living and big-time behavior. It's all about behavior, preparing ourselves on the sixth day for rest. The fifth commandment states that we are to honor our father and our mother if we want to live long in the land. That's common sense, isn't it? Honor your father and your mother. It's only the right thing to do. To respect your elders, to honor them for what they did, for the sacrifices they made in our lives. However, Yahusha also said, if you place father, mother, sister, brother, husbands, wives, children, anybody above me, you're not worthy. If you love them more than me, you're not worthy to be my disciple. So this is where we have to put everything, transition it all into Yahusha Alahim. Because in the natural, in our flesh, of course, we should honor. We should honor everybody. We should be respectful and loving and doing the two royal laws, which are loving Yahusha, your Alahim, with all your heart, mind, body, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. So obviously we're going to love our mother and our father. But some mothers and fathers are unlovable, unreachable, and in some people's cases it might be very abusive. So we can honor them from afar, but the key is to transition into Yahusha, we have to be willing to put him above all else. Mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, wives, children, everybody. We have to put him first and put off our flesh and all the fleshly understandings to transition into the wilderness. As the bride's getting ready to go, Yahusha stood up. So honor your mother and your father through Yahusha Alahim and his understanding. The sixth commandment says, you do not kill. These were commandments given to Moses for Yisrael. How are they transitioned into Yahusha Alahim today? How did he fulfill them all? Because all the Torah and the prophets hang on these two royal laws. Love Yahusha with all your heart, mind, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. How does not killing people transition? Yahusha said about calling your brother a fool, about hating your brother, turning the other cheek, loving your enemies. He spoke about behavior, revolutionary behavior that nobody wanted to hear from somebody who they thought was going to conquer the Romans. No, he was showing them how to die to self. He was showing them how to put on a new behavior, because his ways are not our ways. And his realm is not of this earth. His reign is not of this earth. So the aggression and the violence and the hatred and the cutting down of one another's reputations and characters that's going on in this reign, that's not in his reign. That cannot be filtered into the waiting area. That cannot be filtered into the wilderness of his reign. It doesn't make it through. So if we're going to be transitioning into Yahusha, that commandment also transitions as well, because all the Torah and the prophets hang on that command. We cannot be having any aggression, any violence, any hatred. And there's only love or hate. The two royal laws which teach us love, the fruits of righteousness, or there's hate. The seventh commandment says you do not break wedlock. Other versions say you do not commit adultery. Yahusha made that one really easy. How do we transition that into Yahusha Alahim? He said it himself. You've heard it said, you do not break wedlock. I tell you, if you even look at another woman lustfully with lust in your heart, you have already committed adultery with her. You've already broken wedlock in a sense. So he's making it very easy. It's not about the ritual letter of the law. Oh, I'm do what I want because I'm still not breaking wedlock. I'm still together with the wife of my youth. Yes, but how are you behaving? How are you treating her? How are you treating your own body? How are you treating someone else's body if you're out there doing things with other people? It's about behavior, flirting, battering the eyelids, being very smooth and very sneaky. It's about all those different types of sins that go on, sneaky, private, hidden demons whispering at you. They appear and they approach you very seductively. They slide in, as very attractive as a messenger of light, but they are wicked and evil demons that want to use your flesh to parade you around in all sorts of perversion and idolatry. All sex and advertising and everything in the world today is just all idolatry and sexuality, and it all is getting in the way. It will not filter into the wilderness. The 8th commandment says, you do not steal. That's pretty simple, isn't it? If it's not yours, don't take it. If you want to borrow something, you ask somebody and you bring it back as soon as possible. It's not rocket science, is it? But how does that transition into Yahusha, our Alahim, and his reign? Stealing. Most of the bride don't even acknowledge that Yahusha is Alahim. Would that be the greatest crime? Would that be the greatest identity thief? Not to mention those who don't even call him by his true name, Yahusha. They call him all sorts of pagan names, but that's the ultimate identity theft, isn't it? From the devil, from Satan, stealing Yahusha's identity and his name in order to rob the whole community, the whole world of the power that is involved in that name. If you're not using the name Yahusha and you don't recognize, not just using his name, but if you don't recognize that he's Yahusha, Alahim, seated on the throne, you are stealing from him. You're not letting him have. You're not giving him the glory, the credit, the esteem for who he truly is. You might as well just be acknowledging that he's a prophet or a wise, holy man. No, he's Alahim, seated on the throne. Yahuah is gone. Yahusha is there, on the throne, ushering in all the judgments as the spotless lamb, slain lamb, and he's coming back on the clouds for us. Do not steal. Do not take his name. That's his. The 9th commandment says, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. In other words, do not spread a malicious lie. Do not gossip. Do not try and change people's opinion about somebody else. That's what the commandment is. How does that transition into Yahusha's 2 royal laws? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Are you willing to go there? To think, oh, I wouldn't like somebody saying this about me, whether they understand me or not. Why can't they just let me have what I'm trying to do here? And if I'm wrong, Yahusha will let me know. Well, that's what we should all be doing, brothers and sisters, giving ourselves the space to breathe, not making excuses for ourselves, because that's what lies are. The commandment is basically saying, don't lie. Don't lie about yourself or about others. Don't try and sweep things under the rug. Don't try and hold up people that shouldn't be held up, and try and ruin people that shouldn't be ruined. If you've tried to help somebody and have a conversation with them and they will not hear what you have to say, then just let them have it. Because you can't change anybody's mind about one single thing. Nothing. So it's best to move on. Just knock the dust off your shoes and keep moving. Yeah, it's not your job to try and change people's minds. It's your job to hear his voice and put it out into the world. Teach my sheep. So do not spread false witness. Get into the fruits of righteous love. They are not to covet. You shall not covet your neighbour's wife, house, male servant, donkeys, all those sort of things. In other words, do not want other people's stuff. We all look at stuff and we go, oh, that'd be nice. Yeah, it's not talking about just observing things. It's talking about a deep-seated desire. And in scriptural times, it was actually talking about going even further than that and planning to take it. So it was kind of tied into stealing. And whether it be your neighbour's wife, house, anything, it was, I see it, I want it, I will have it, and I will take it. So, but it starts as a thought, as we know. So it's teaching us, how do we transition into Yahusha Alahim? To be content with what he gives us. If you want more stuff, and you need more stuff, I should say, then go and work and get what you need. You don't have grand ideas and grand schemes and tell people, I've heard a word from Yahusha, and then put your hand out for money. That's not how it works. If he gives you an idea and gives you the gifts and talents to execute it, he'll also give you the resources. So you don't have to go around being a religious scab trying to get money off people. If you're doing the right thing, he provides everything, okay? And the biggest lesson in all this, when we transition into Yahusha Alahim, is to be content. Be content with what he's given us. Be content with the wife of your youth. Be content with your children, with your house, with your car. Be content with what you have. And come into the love. The 10 Commandments must be fulfilled and completed, transitioned into Yahusha Alahim, to be written on our hearts and behaved in a real and living way. Yahusha came along and said, a new commandment I give you, to love one another as I have loved you. In other words, he died for us. He gave us 2 new royal laws. They weren't new as in no one had heard from them. They were new as in his lifting them up in new power and ultimately in his blood, saying, love Yahusha, your Alahim, with all your heart, mind, body and strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. If you do these 2 commandments, you are fulfilling all the Torah and the prophets. You mean I've just spent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years studying and dissecting all the law and the prophets, and you're telling me I should have just been loving in the right name, in the right spirit, in the right transition? Hell yes, you should have been. But if you didn't know, you didn't know. Most of us didn't know. Now we know. It's time to come into the loving fruits: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. It's time to come into those fruits. And if we are behaving those fruits all the time, from the portal on our hearts, we can access him. Come boldly. If we are behaving those fruits, we are fulfilling all the 10 Commandments. So we don't need to harp and harp about the 10 Commandments. We need to harp and harp about a behavior, a revolution in behavior to love. Teachers, preachers, pastors, rabbis are harping and harping about all the old Torah shadows and laws and precepts. And they don't even know what they mean. They don't even have the spirit of Yahusha Alahim within them, because they don't even acknowledge that the Father is gone and the Son, Yahusha Alahim, is seated on the throne. He opened all the scrolls. We transition into him, and he transitioned all his word. That's why he lived it all out, to fulfill every jot and every tittle of it. He fulfilled it. He completed it. He hung on a torture stake and said, it is finished. It is completed. I have fulfilled it all. Take me, Father. And his spirit left him. He gave up his spirit when he was ready. He died for us that we may be washed clean and have access to him so that we can transition. You must overcome. You get immersed in his spirit and fire, and that gives you the power. That incorruptible seed comes in you and you get the power. It starts to change you and prompts you and flogs and disciplines and chastises you so that you will put off the flesh, put off the carnal self, the carnal commandments of sin and death, which need to be transitioned into real royal laws of love and need to be behaved in a real, daily, living way, to choose him in everything. That is the fulfillment of the 10 Commandments. Get with it.